Hello and welcome to the Pod Awakens as we kick off our Bad Batch Binge. My name is Jordan, and with me, I was going to say as always, but on these cartoon rewatches, first watches for him, Logan.
Jordan, I feel like I was listening to some of your other Pod Awakens episodes because I'm not a full timer here, but I feel
Yeah,
like we
part
are the
time.
Bad Batch. Like I feel like we are a collection of dysfunctional toys that provide really good analysis and are probably one of the best. No, I'm just kidding, but yeah, it's fun. Like I love listening to your other episodes. I love this podcast because I feel like this one's just a lot of fun because you get different perspectives from different people. So I've enjoyed it as a fan, but I'm excited to get back into this because it's been fun going through Clone Wars and then through the tales of the Jedi. So, man, I can't wait to talk about this episode because I really enjoyed it.
And I feel like, again, I'm very justified in not going in chronological order instead of release order because this episode that we're talking about, just aftermath, just the first episode of Bad Batch, which is like almost like what we would call a direct to DVD length movie, an hour 15, hour 20 minute. This is like if you were going to pop in Simba's Pride, hour 15, hour 20, direct to DVD or whatever. This was Disney Plus show, but it kicks off the show with a full length movie length, pretty much. Episode. And this episode, the way it kicks off is the Clone Wars logo burning into the Bad Batch logo. And I was like, all right, yeah, I am correct that this is the order we should have done.
That was the coolest thing I think of it. Like I got goosebumps for some reason. I'm a weirdo. But I wasn't expecting the title card to get me like it did, but it got me. I was like, that's pretty cool because it just kind of burns through and as the Clone Wars fades, that's pretty cool. I was like, that's
We had the
awesome.
Tom Kane narration again,
Yeah.
too, which was a shock. I forgot about that, honestly. It's been 3 years, almost 4 years since I watched this first episode. And I was like, wow, okay, yeah, I forgot that we kicked it off with the narration, too. So, yeah, very much a good segue from the vibes of the Clone Wars into the Bad Batch. This show premiered on May 4th, 2021, hour and 16 minutes, directed by Stuart Lee, Sal Ruiz, and Nathaniel Villanueva. All three of those names, by the way, we've discussed on Clone Wars. And it was written by Jennifer Corbett and Dave Filoni. The Disney Plus synopsis: the clones of the Bad Batch find themselves in a changing galaxy after the Clone Wars. So I guess give me your first general vibes about it, then we'll kind of dive into the story stuff and little teases of what's to come as well. But what was your thoughts here? We know the Bad Batch; they were in the last season of Clone Wars, but like having a full show about them. Like, what was your thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, I think I go into each of these Star Wars shows, and where the day of recording this, Skeleton Crews, both episodes had dropped last week, and I
Yeah,
always forget just how deep that these shows get when they've got good writers with Star Wars. Like I feel like, and I know you did a podcast recently that where you talked about the state of Star Wars and kind of in the direction in which they're headed, and I think with Bad Batch, I think people forget that the animated stuff is relatively recent, and I think that's another thing that I don't think they put into the bucket of being successful because I feel like every time now, Jordan, that we start one of these shows where we've watched that last season of Clone Wars that came out this half of the decade, like now you watch all these Bad Batch shows that have come out, 2021 all the way through 2020. What was it, 2023?
no, I think it finished this year,
Was it this
actually,
year?
2024.
Couldn't
Yeah,
remember which year it was. I don't even remember what year it is now. But yeah, no, I just feel like again, I went into this show going, this is probably going to be really good, and it exceeded what I thought. So I really enjoyed this episode. I thought, the animation is really cool because you see the progression when we started watching Clone Wars at the beginning, just how much it's progressed in the technology and how much advancement there is. I mean, soon, and this is funny because you see this all the time in social media where some of the older folks are watching video games and they think that it's real life, but
yeah,
it
my
is.
great.
It's amazing. Like it's amazing how much it just looks like real life. And I love the animated series, and we're off to a really good start with this hour and 15-minute first episode. I love these. Like it flew by last night when I was watching it before bed.
Yeah, I mean, I think this would have been like, so they did develop this as all one episode, but with the 3 directors and stuff, I feel like they probably made this as like 3 episodes,
Yeah.
or like each one was assigned a certain part. And I'm sure like if they were ever to put it on TV, they could break these up into like 3 episodes or whatever, maybe 4 episodes. And you can have like pretty good 22-minute chunks throughout this where you're looking at like the very beginning with the Order 66 stuff, then going to Camino, then going and meeting a character that we're very familiar with in the Resistance type thing, and then ending with the final confrontation on Camino. That's like 4 episodes of stuff that we all got without having to press like play next episode, and it just flowed very well. So let's start with it. So we start on another planet. I think it was called like Keller or Keller. No, I think it's Kellner or Keller. But it
Yeah,
is.
Tyler. Yeah.
We start with Depa Billaba and Caleb Doom. I kind of teased this in our Tales of the Jedi episode. Did you recognize this boy, Logan? He is the little boy who, in Ahsoka's training episode, is sitting there watching her, and he like looks at his master like, "Oh, look at this!" Like as he's watching
I
her
didn't. Yeah.
practice. Yeah, yeah,
I guess I didn't put that together. That's pretty cool. I
yeah.
like
So
that.
that's a nice little tease. Guess what?
Yeah.
He will come back again at
I thought you
another
were gonna
point.
say he died. I
Oh
was
yeah, he
like,
died. Yeah, he did
dang,
jump into the
Jordan.
falls, and he's dead.
Right. Yeah.
Hunter was right. But yeah, this is the kid from that. We get to see Order 66 again from a different perspective here. As at first, Caleb is supposed to bring reinforcements. He comes down and he brings 5 reinforcements, and it is the Bad Batch. They come in and they take care of business. And at first, everybody's like, "We need it more than 5 people," and then they just wreck everything,
That was a great part.
and they win. And pretty much while they're going to go do something else, uh, could you feel it coming? Could you feel it coming especially when the commander's like, oh, I gotta go answer this call, and then he pulls up its execute order 66.
Yeah, it was weird because they were talking about how Obi-Wan was dealing with Grievous, and I was like
Yes.
trying to put it in together with a timeline. I'm like, where am I in this timeline? And then all of a sudden, it made sense when the commander's like, oh, I got to take a call. I'm like, oh, okay, now I know where we are. Like I was like trying to figure out we before, we after, like what's going on.
Yeah. So the way it happens in Revenge of the Sith, right, is we have Obi-Wan confront Grievous, and right after he kills him, pretty much, he goes meets back up with Commander Cody, who gives him his lightsaber that he dropped.
Yeah.
And then right after that, Commander Cody gets the call. So what I'm assuming here is the last word that the clones have heard is that Obi-Wan is going to confront Grievous. And probably during this beginning, he has already killed Grievous, or he is killing him at that moment when then the order comes in from Palpatine. So it is all very like going on at the same time, which is cool because like the last episode we watched, if you take out Tales of the Jedi, right, was the Clone Wars finale, which is also intersecting during that as well. I think it'd be really cool to stitch all of that into one thing. Like cut between. I know somebody is cut between like the last 4 episodes and Revenge of the Sith, but then also add in the Bad Batch premiere and make like this one long movie. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, let's get on it, Jordan.
Yeah, I'll start editing it tonight. But we find out that Order 66 does not affect the Bad Batch, right? Like none of them are having any sort of drive to go kill. In fact, all of them are like, "What's going on?" I figured you probably had to know that was going to be the case, maybe because we're following a whole show, The Bad Batch. But I don't know. Like, was it a shock to you that none of them were like, "We got to kill the Jedi"? Except for maybe one, right? There is like one of these Bad Badgers that maybe it's working.
I think they played it perfectly. I think there was a lot of confusion. They didn't know what to do because they're like, while we are clones, like we're not the typical clones, and we don't follow orders. That's kind of our gig. We're kind of the outlaws that come in that, we're going to break the rules and we're going to get things done that the clones can't really do because they can't break their conditioning, I guess. So I was like, man, I wonder if some of them turned, because then I couldn't remember. I don't know too much about Bad Batch yet, where I'm like, where I would know, nor have I seen any kind of spoilers, who goes with them forward into the season. Like, you know what I mean? So I didn't really have an idea, but I did feel like there would be a one or two that might be like, no, we're clones. We're supposed to carry out the orders. And yeah, we get that. So at least one. So it was really well played. I was really interested to see how they played it, and I think Caleb did a really nice job. I mean, the actor that played him, he's torn. He doesn't know what to do. He just saw his master get killed by the clones, and now clones are chasing him. And he doesn't know much about the Bad Batch because he just found them. Like he's
Right.
just, he just pulled them out of his hat.
He's like, hey, these are clones. I just
Right.
saw clones kill my master.
Yeah.
Do you know who voices Caleb, by the way? That
Mm.
is Freddie Prinze Jr.
Is it really?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Oh, I love Freddie Prinze.
Okay, so we have them chasing Hunter's trying to chase Caleb to get him to be like, hey, trust us. And meanwhile you have Crosshair firing at him. It's like, damn it. But he lies. Hunter lies and says that Caleb fell, but when he really just makes an incredible leap over the waterfall ravine type thing and escapes. This was a story told in comics as well, but it was very different. So I've been alluding to it. I'll just tell you this too. So it's not real big spoilers or anything. Caleb is actually another character in another show. He's in Rebels as he is known as Kanan in Rebels actually. So he changes his name to hide from being a Jedi. Kind of like Obi-Wan changes his name to Ben, but doesn't change his last name. Caleb is smart enough to change his first and last name. Okay.
Obi-Wan's, he was glad that Google didn't exist at that point. It's like, oh, thank
Ben
God.
Kenobi. You think that's any relation to Obi-Wan
That
Kenobi?
one, yeah.
I mean,
Last
Luke
Jedi
puts
alive.
that together. Luke puts that together, all right?
And he's a kid. He's like, And Luke doesn't get out a whole lot. So it's like.
But there was a comic book called Star Wars Kanan, and it does discuss this. It is on the same planet. It's a little different. It doesn't feature the Bad Batch. So a lot of people were kind of upset that they, like, I don't know, overwrote that. But I think it works better in this case anyway, especially because we get to see it. Let's be honest. While I love comics, I have whole podcasts talking about comics. Not a lot of people read them, right? So if we're talking about the live action stuff, more people watch that, right? Live action is king in the sense of Star Wars. What you used to only watch, right? You didn't watch animation.
No. Yeah,
Then you have
the
the fans that watch animation too. And then an even smaller percentage you have of fans that will read the comics, read the books, watch the animation, watch the show. That's me, right? There's my level there. But to be able to see it on film on the show here, I think there used to be a way George Lucas did this. So he had different levels of canon back then where anything live action was king. And then like once Bad Batch once Clone Wars got introduced, it was like anything George Lucas is making pretty much was top level and could overwrite the books and the comics and whatever. So like if they discuss the same events, or if like a character dies in one of these books but then shows up in the Clone Wars, it's like, guess what? That book doesn't matter anymore. Whatever. That's how George operated. And, Disney took over and they said everything's canon, the books, the comics, blah, blah, blah. So people really bought into that. But then you have situations like this and in Tales of the Jedi when the Ahsoka novel, which Filoni kind of overwrote that's his own character. I'm kind of fine with that. And guess what? he helped create Rebels, which means Kanan is his own character too. So I'm fine with them actually like writing over stuff, especially stuff that people are not going to read as much, like the comics. Um, but I know that's a hot button topic. But like I said, there's a hierarchy here. Most Star Wars fans will not read those, right? Like it's a very small subset of fans that'll read those. Um, and it has a stigma against it, the same way animation does. Comics have a stigma against them. Less so now because of things like the MCU and stuff, but there used to be more of a stigma against comic books. And if you want to know why, you can read some of those Star Wars comic books and be like, wow, yeah, this should not count. I've read some that I'm like, yeah, I don't really count this.
I was gonna say that that's the way with a lot of fiction, and especially in books, like um in comic books. Like I feel like because
Cursed
they can,
child.
right, yeah, because they can take the liberties and go further into depth with books, and there's a lot of time that they have to fill different things and voids, where media, you're so limited to what you can show because of the effects, because of the scenes, because you have to paint that picture better. Whereas books, you really got to get into the nitty and gritty of what's going on inside of the story. And I feel like, and that's the other thing too, is media is so easily consumed through visuals such as TV and streaming now, where I feel like generations below ours, reading is becoming less and less of a, it's hard to keep people's attention that long because things are so short form now. So it's why I'm surprised that, sometimes with these shows that they're still an hour long. But I think millennials can, still watch hour long TV shows. But I do feel like as time goes on, I don't know what TV looks like.
God, I hope it's not like 5 minute long
Could you imagine like
episodes.
just like really short episodes of things?
No, thank you. They tried that on Quibi. Did you
Mm.
remember that? The app Quibi?
Yeah, I remember it. I just
I watched some and I'm like, this is not great.
oh,
It's pretty much, it was a movie cut up into 5 minute
yeah.
chunks. Is what they pretty much did. They would shoot a movie pretty much, cut it into 5 minute chunks. So they go back to Camino, and after all of this, and when they get to Camino, they get word that there's a Palpatine is going to give a speech, and this is his speech that he gives in Revenge of the Sith, right? Like when he's like, "The attack has left me disfigured," um, and where he says that this is an empire now, and he is the emperor, and everybody's cheering except for the Bad Batch, and they've kind of been noticing stuff wrong with the regular troopers, as they call regs, right? Where they're not as like personable. And Joy was kind of asking me this as she was watching. She was like, "Why are the Bad Batch the only ones in like their own like clone armor?" And I was like, "Well, that's the thing. Like they used to all have different looking armor, but now they're all wearing the white, clean armor because guess what? The war's over once they don't have like separate squads, I guess, but also they're they're taking out the individuality of the clones because they don't want that for the empire." And that's kind of the first shift we see towards stormtroopers, right? Stormtroopers do not have any special uniform. It is just the plain white, and you are just as indisposable or just as disposable as the next stormtrooper. But what do you think of seeing this Palpatine address from Revenge of the Sith in animation here?
It was awesome. I love when they're in those big hangars or in those big ships, and they've got the clones all kind of lined up in their little squads, and there's thousands, it looks like, of them. But anytime Palpatine kind of gives the Wizard of Oz kind of thing, I'm always a big fan of it, just because I love that voice. I love Palpatine's villainous ways. As far as I think he might be one of the best villains in any of the shows that I watch. So yeah, no, it was cool. I really enjoyed that, and I like that they were able to translate what you see in Revenge of the Sith to some of these shows that take place in the same timeline. So
And then we get introduced to Omega, as they say in their New Zealand Camino accent. I guess I don't know. we get introduced to Omega, who what was your first thought on Omega? Because she's not presented as anybody special, but by the end of the show, we find out she is actually pretty special here at the end of this episode. So what was your first thoughts on meeting Omega? Because my wife's was, why is a little girl helping as a lab assistant? I was like, they'll explain it. Just watch.
Yeah, I thought the Kaminoans were into child
Kaminoans.
labor. Kaminoans, sorry. Were into child labor. I don't know. Child labor laws must not be high there.
Yeah,
But
they're cheaper.
right,
I
yeah,
mean,
they
come
are
on.
cheaper. Yeah, you know. But yeah, I don't know. I was excited because I was like, oh, somebody new and somebody who's obviously going to help the Bad Batch. Who I was like, knowing Star Wars, knowing this kid, they're going to save this kid and they're going to take off and go somewhere else with this child. Seems to be the thing of Star Wars. They like to take children away from evil places. Um, and Mark Omega or Momega up as one of those kids. But I thought she was like sorcery. Like I thought, maybe she is, but she looked like a sorceress with that thing on her head.
Oh yeah, I
So
think it's
what
just a
is that?
Kaminoan thing.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
what is that? I was like, some rock on your head. You look like the Pandorans. Different show, but movie altogether. But yeah, I was excited because it's like, ooh, got another child that's kind of like Ahsoka-esque. So
Yeah, and we will find it. We'll talk more about her and her role later because I think they set it up pretty well here. We have Tarkin arrive, right? Grand Moff Tarkin arrives. He wants to cut the clone army and have. Well, actually, he wasn't Grand Moff at this point, I think. He wants to cut the clone army and have a conscription service. So, what this show is starting to do and what sets up here in this episode, right, is there was always some confusion in the sense of the stormtroopers, right? Like once they get introduced as clones in episode 2, people thought, okay, that means all the stormtroopers are clones in the original trilogy. That's not true. It actually came out that they end up ending the clones and, doing a conscription service because it's cheaper. And that also explains why the stormtroopers are terrible shots. They reference that here when he said, when the Kaminoans like, they won't be nearly as accurate or as well trained as our clones. Like, who cares, right? That's what their thing is. Like, who cares? Like, we just need a force to intimidate us, to intimidate people because we won. We have control, and we'll have more numbers, right, for cheaper. So Tarkin, I guess, is a fan of the bigger numbers, less accurate army. And that's a little hint to that. But I remember when the Force Awakens trailer dropped and Finn stood up as a clone, as a stormtrooper, people were like, wait, why isn't he a clone? Like, one, this is like even so much later than, we're talking about what, 30 years or so after Return of the Jedi. So obviously they're not going to have the same setup, but also like, a lot of people were, actually, the whole time, where, actually it's a conscription service at that point, but like, it was never detailed really in any media. It was in like those visual guides and stuff like that. There wasn't any like big thing talking about it. This show is starting to show that pivot for the Empire, right? Like, we won the war. We used the clones to win the war because the clones were kind of a stand-in for the droids, right?
mm-hmm.
You had droids that could be manufactured and put out there as cannon fodder. And you had the clones that would be smarter than the droids, better than the droids, and they were also manufactured for cannon fodder, pretty much, just made to go die in a war that Palpatine was manipulating on both sides. So ultimately, they were losing their lives for no reason, right? Once that charade is done, Palpatine can then start transitioning. Let's move on from the clones. There's no actual enemy to worry about because I was one manipulating both sides. So like, that's it. It's over.
Right.
Anakin takes out the whole Trade Federation when he goes to Mustafar, right before he faces Obi-Wan. So this is kind of around that same time here. And then you have the pivot to, all right, we're going to just have a mass number of stormtroopers that are volunteer people or whatever that will pay conscripted, servicemen, and we will just have numbers, and who cares if they're actually good? They're just cannon fodder as well, but there's no enemy to worry about. So that's what kind of like this show, I feel like if I'm going to give a statement on what this show is kind of about, it's really the transition from the Republic into the Empire. And throughout these episodes, you're going to see a lot of changes that the clones have to handle and that like the Senate and stuff will have to handle that show them slipping into the Empire that we will know later on. So then we have like a fight in the kitchen, right? Omega comes and sits with them, and she actually wants to sit with them. And they're kind of confused by this because they are, as we see, the regs are always giving them crap for being genetically defective, right? And Omega steps up for them, throws some food, right? And then that shows Wrecker she's got their back. So then Wrecker has her back. He throws some food at them and starts this whole kitchen fight here. And, Echo actually gets knocked out, and we kind of wake up to Echo in the infirmary with AZ, the droid that was helping Fives, right? When Fives was having his issue. So it was nice to see an AZ droid again. And Echo is worried about Tarkin being here. He actually references some Clone Wars episodes when he's talking about when he died, right? Like everybody thought he had died. He was on that mission with Tarkin, and Tarkin was already kind of like anti-clone at that point. And he's warning them like, hey, this guy doesn't like us. He's not going to want to have clones. Like, this isn't good that he's here. But Tarkin's like, hey, I want to see more of the Bad Batch. And they do like, it kind of felt like the episode Rookies, right? Or, yeah, that's the one I think I'm talking about. Or that batch of episodes we talked about with Rookies and then Clone Cadets.
Yeah.
When they're in here and they are, they're in that training room. And it's felt very similar to that vibe. But Tarkin makes them all switch to live rounds. Tarkin's a little jerk.
Yeah, he's one of the worst. Like when he shows up, I'm just going, man, this guy, like General Hux is kind of a cowardish version of him. Like I always felt like he was like Tarkin is like the OG evil, maniacal. Like I mean, give him props. He's part of why the reason the Empire I think is so strong because he's ruthless. He's like, let's kill him, let's knock him out. And poor Wrecker. I mean, Wrecker's like the Hulk of clones. And then all of a sudden he's pushed back because they're shocked, obviously, when live rounds are being used and it's no longer the training shots where he's like, all we have is the training shots and we're trying to take down, these machines that are shooting live bullets at us. So I don't know what to do.
Yeah, we get a nice scene where they're like, hacking into rewiring the droids, right? The training droids, and shows that they can overcome the issue again. Which is a nice thing because Echo was actually part of that clone cadets, right? So he's going through almost something exactly similar here. Tarkin's upset. He doesn't think that they will follow orders, right? So he gives them this mission. He comes into the clone room at some point. They get an assignment. But before that, we're in the clone embryo room. And Tarkin is talking to Omega and the Kaminoans and asks, did they execute Order 66? And the Kaminoans were like, well, both of those Jedi are dead. So, yeah, we think they did, right? But Tarkin's like, hey, actually, I think I got word that Caleb Doom escaped. And, let's see, right? So he gives them this mission to go to this planet to take out what he calls insurgents. And when the clones get there, they see like Republic logos, like insignia on the stuff, and they get introduced to Saul Guerrera. We're back. Saul Guerrera is back.
He's so back
again.
Wild because he looks different. I don't know. He looked like he's been through a lot. He
I felt
looks like
like they
he's
did a good job with his animation to make
yeah.
him look like more in the stage from like it's clearly his Clone Wars looking self, but aged up a bit,
Right.
getting closer to the Forrest Whitaker,
Yes.
Saw Gerrera.
Yeah, and I even thought, like, he's kinda got more of a Forrest Whitaker kinda way about him,
Yeah,
just by the way he interacts with the group, and no, this was a great scene. I was really confused as to where they were going and what they were doing. I mean, I figured it was gonna be some kind of test of alliance because he says it, but, like, I was not expecting this. I wasn't expecting him to run up against Saw, and I love Saw Gerrera, so, um I was really excited because like, okay, cool. So this is where this is going. He's going to talk about how there is still and one of the best lines of the episode, Jordan, when he says that the Clone War may have ended, but a civil war is about to begin. Like
yeah,
that is such a good line.
I have that written down here. I was like, yeah, I need to write that down.
Yeah,
Um, because he says Hunter's like, hey, we were assigned to take out insurgents, and Saul's like, yeah, that's us. Like, they don't want like they've turned their back on it. I don't want to be part of an empire. Is pretty much his point, right? Everything we would have fought for would be over if we fall in line here. With the Jedi decimated, Palpatine has control, and that's the thing too. Because they kind of say Tech is like, well, Palpatine said that the Jedi tried to take over, and Saul's like, I would have pegged you for the smart one.
yeah,
I thought you were the smart one, and it's like, oh. And he's like, hey, with the Jedi decimated, like he now has full control. Like this is a power move. That
yeah,
wasn't actually what happened, right? And Saul sees through that. This whole time, though, Crosshair is like, let's kill him.
yeah,
So let's kill them and all their kids. Let's kill them. Like that's
yeah.
Crosshair the whole time.
Great. Okay, Anakin, calm down.
Yeah. Yeah, he goes back. He's like, I killed him and the women and children too.
What's up with the toothpick? Like, why does he have a toothpick?
I love it.
It's like
Very
it's
Western
very yeah, it's very like who was
because he's a
I,
sniper, I guess. So
yeah.
it's very like I don't know.
He gave me like a foreign version of like Cad Bane. Like he gave me like a very foreign
Yeah.
version of like Western and I was like really distracted by the toothpick. I was like, who does he think he is, Dusty Baker? Like I'm so confused. He's just carrying around this toothpick, and I was like, because you're thinking Star Wars, which is really cool and a totally different show, but like I do like how there seems to be more leaning into like things that we as humans can relate to, like there's stuff like that, and I think you see that more and more with Star Wars as they get into other worlds, like the other outer rim and
Mhm.
other other planets, because you see that with also see it with Skeleton Crew, like where it's
Yeah.
I don't know, it feels very human. Like you can feel like they're going to school and there's like lockers and they have all that stuff. Where like here they're like, okay, like even the toothpicks and like just kind of jungle aspect, and Saw Gerrera and them feel like they are part of this group that's been kind of casted out to the outer rim and kind of hanging out in a jungle and hiding. So yeah, it's cool to see Star Wars kind of connect on a human level.
So Hunter says we're not going to do it, and there's a probe droid that's watching the whole time and streaming this back. I guess this is what Tarkin's watching. And Crosshair and Hunter argue this whole time, and Hunter ends up shooting the probe droid. And Hunter points out that, what, Omega was right about Tarkin. She also warned us not to come back to Camino. And Tech says, hey, guess what? She also is one of us. She is a defective clone. And everybody's like, what? And he's like, yeah, they said there's 5 defective clones. There's only 4 of us because Echo is a reg, right? Echo was a reg that got blown up, that got become a separatist machine. He's not a defective clone. He is like a modified clone, I guess you'd say. And they're like, and Echo Tech says like, I ran a test or whatever, and she is the 5th defect. And Hunter's like, well, when we have to go back, we cannot leave her with the Kaminoans or Tarkin. So that was that a shock to you? Because I feel like they played out pretty well. There's 5 Bad Batch. And you're like, oh yeah, 5 defects. There's 5 of them. Cool. But we kind of forget Echo was not originally part of the Bad Batch. He only got with them at the end of that Bad Batch episode, right? After he was back from being saved or whatever, that he left Rex and got the okay to go on to do the Bad Batch. Um, I think they set it up so well that they plant that number ahead of time, and then when you come back to it, text like, "Oh yeah, by the way, Omega is the fifth defect."
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I guess you lose track of it because I was sitting there thinking, okay, like this is the 5, but then you forget Echo's more of the modified, where Omega's technically the Bad Batch, and I'm really interested to see what the progression of that is, because like I don't know, I feel like there would be ways that you can manipulate ones that are not completely defective.
She will be, obviously a main character in the show, but she
Hmm.
is probably what the show is going to revolve around, is what I would
Yeah.
say. Um, and her role is that. So Omega goes into the Bad Batch bunk with AZ. Someone's coming. It's a clone. She's like, "Hey, I got lost." The clone just shoots AZ with the stun gun. I'm like, "Damn." Um, but the Bad Batch arrive to find Omega. The clones are waiting. Tarkin's there. He's like, "You guys are treasonous." And they get thrown into the brig where Omega is from getting caught. And Crosshair again yells at Hunter. And the clones come in for Crosshair now. He's going to get evaluated. And the Kaminoans say, "Hey, the chip actually may have worked, but it's just not, because he's defective, it's not working all the way, but he's still like more loyal than the rest of them." It's pretty much what they're saying. And that's what Tarkin feels. And Tarkin's like, "All right, is there a way we can like juice this chip up?" And they start like electroshock therapy to like get the chip, I guess, working more optimally. That's if that's actually working. We don't actually know if all of that is true or if that's just how Crosshair is or what. Like, we don't know any of that. So um, it'll be interesting to follow that throughout, because um, like, I know the answer, I guess. I guess if I remember correctly, but it's like the way that she says it is like, it seems to be working. It's kind of what she says, right? Like, and
Yeah.
we kind of get hints to it too when he's like, "Good soldiers follow orders," which is of
Yeah.
course the line we know from the Clone Wars.
Yeah. And the way he says it too, like there's a tone that they have where it's like, okay,
Yeah,
like that's very, you're being manipulated by that chip. Like it is definitely, you're following the orders. And I love that Hunter continuously goes, that's not what we do. We do not follow orders. Like
that's our
that is
thing. Yeah.
not, yeah, like how dare you deviate from the norm, you moron. And yeah, no, I love this, and you can see it building the whole episode, like that there's going to be this kind of uh, conflict between all of them. So
I mean, just imagine, like, they grow up together, they're
yeah,
brothers,
it's gotta
and
be
now they're
tough.
having this fundamental
Yeah,
breakdown of, you're not,
right,
you
and
know,
not really their fault either, right?
right,
Like
right.
it's a happenstance of the it's because of what's happening with Order 66. They don't know what side to be on, and I love when stories kind of present this where you don't know what's the right choice between good and evil. Like you've been told this whole time that like this person is supposed to be the one looking out for you, and then they turn into the bad guy, but like you don't know whether to turn because you don't know who's telling the truth. Like, ooh, the Jedi. Because right away, like I think you said you talked about this, but like I love that they explain that the Jedi are the ones being put up for treason, because it makes the bet, because not a lot of them have, they've had enough interaction with Jedi where they think, well, that could be true, because the Jedi kind of let that happen because they don't really get involved. So there could be very much like the Jedi kind of are still this entity that are very secretive, and like so I think the clones don't trust them. So it does cause that, like, I don't know if I trust you, and you could have done that.
Yeah. We also have so while he's getting taken out, right? Omega is, I don't know if you noticed this too, but she's like copying the Bad Batch throughout. Like, there's a time where Hunter is like
Uh-uh.
sitting like this or whatever, and then she does
Kind of like a
this, and then he moves his
childish. Yeah,
hand and she moves her hand. Yeah, it's
I didn't
very
notice
cute
that.
when they're
Yeah,
sitting in the brig. And Tech says, "Hey, these cells were not actually made to keep us in like Camino doesn't have cells, right? We
right,
were not originally made for this, and this wasn't made for people like us. Wrecker can just punch his way out of here,
right.
and he does. Wrecker, they do this thing where like Wrecker punches
It's
and then slides
so
back
good.
into the
Yeah,
seat, and everybody's like, oh, "Okay, nothing's going on there." And he punches like the panel loose, but it's big enough for Omega to go in.
very
And
much gave me like Guardians of the Galaxy vibes with
yeah,
like
like
Drax.
putting Groot or Rocket in there.
Yeah, it like it gave me because he looks big. He kind of looks like Drax, so it's like, yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
kind of looks like that's what they're doing, and it's funny.
Very similar though,
Yeah,
in the sense of like the Guardians are misfits that
yeah,
are, yeah, and the same thing
seen
with the
as a
Bad Batch.
blunder, but are
Yeah,
actually really tough to
lifesavers.
defeat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, Omega goes in the gap and she goes up to the ceiling, and they start wondering where's Omega, the clones who are guarding, and she like punches the thing so that way she falls on him, and it's enough for her to go get the switch to open up the prison, and then Wrecker comes out and starts wrecking people. They go to the hangar and find their gear first, and then they want to go find Crosshair, but they don't have to go find Crosshair because he finds them and he's leading the clones that are going after them. We have another like showdown between Crosshair and Hunter as Crosshair is yelling at them, and they're pretty much like, "Hey, you should have just followed orders," and Hunter's like, "We don't do that again," right? And there's a shootout. And during this, it looks like Crosshair is going to hit Hunter, but Omega has the stun gun and hits Crosshair. First time firing a weapon, she says. So maybe that shows how special she actually is. But they are able to escape, and Omega gives Wrecker his doll that he was looking for. I think you can find a doll like this in Galaxy's Edge, by the way. They have stuff like that. And then we have the Kaminoans talking, and the Prime Minister hears that Omega has escaped, and he's like, "We cannot tell the Empire this. Do not say that she's escaped." Or that we've lost her, I guess, really. Hunter and Omega have this nice talk, and kind of like, where are they going to go? And Hunter has an idea. He says, "We have a friend that we can go visit." And Omega watches the stars turn blue as they hit hyperspace, and that's the end of the episode. So one thing I think they do really cool too is, Crosshair being on the other side gives us a little bit of an intro to the Empire. We will be able
yeah,
to see the Empire from a clone's perspective because we have a clone that we follow, part of the Bad Batch, on that side. So I think that's really cool. And do you have any guesses on who they might be going to visit? I'll tell you that the next episode is actually a pretty good clue, but I don't know if you remember this this character. But the episode title is "Cut and Run."
It wouldn't be. Oh gosh, it wouldn't be. What's her name? Oh gosh. Oh man, I'm blanking. Bo-Katan.
No, it's
No.
not Bo-Katan. It is another clone, actually. And I guess we'll save it, and I'll see if you remember the character when we come back.
Okay.
But it is somebody we met in the Clone Wars, and I'm guessing I don't know how they know this character because we didn't see the Bad Batch interact with this character, but it is somebody we saw our clones that we followed in the show interact with. Oh, so maybe Echo knows him. Maybe Echo knows him. I don't know. I'll have to go back.
Because they allude right to going to see her, don't they? Like
I don't think so.
I couldn't remember. Like
I
as
think
they're
they say
flying
like
away.
No, I think they say. I know they say like we have a lot of like we don't have many friends,
Yeah.
but there is one that we might be able to go to, and it is like the person that they're going to see next episode. Um, but next time we're going to be talking episodes 2 and 3, cut and run, and replacements. So we have a few weeks where it's just 2 episodes, then we kind of go into mostly 3 to 4 episodes throughout. So next week will probably be a little shorter as we just talked those 2 episodes. But overall, vibes on Bad Batch.
Great. Again, I think as we get more and more into these, I'm like, I love Clone Wars. It might be recency bias, and I loved Clone Wars, but then I'm like, man, if Bad Batch if it continues to go this way, I'll love Bad Batch more probably, and then Rebels more. It'll probably just be recency, but um, I love these animated shows. I'm glad that I got into them just because it fills in so many gaps. And unfortunately, I do think that there will be fans out there, and maybe if you're listening to this, and maybe this is like where you're going, hey, maybe I want to watch one of the animated series. As somebody who always watched the live action, there were so many gaps between, especially now, especially since we've got Mandalorian, Boba Fett, that we've gotten the Skeleton Crew, that we've gotten Ahsoka. There's so many things in between that I feel like you're missing pieces of the story. Rogue One, like Andor, like you're missing so many pieces of things that they're just subtle nods. But like it's it's kind of like Marvel. Like if you love Marvel for what it was, where it just if you missed one, you probably missed out on a whole bunch through the Infinity Saga. Where that like I feel like it's the same way right now with Skywalker and like there's so many plug and play pieces that like I feel like they really do a nice job with and Dave Filoni is easily one of my favorite storytellers in like the whole galaxy of all movies. And I just feel like they do such a good job with this, and we're off to a good start. I feel like this is one of those shows that like I was sitting there today going, man, I kind of want to watch the second and third one. But I'd have to take extensive notes because I usually try to watch them like on Sunday morning or
Right, right.
Saturday night, so I have like it fresh in my mind. But like I just want to binge them. Maybe I'll watch them twice. I don't know. But like this become like this, it's Bad Batch Binge. Like I just want to keep watching them. But I'm glad you got me into this, Jordan. I'm glad you were like, yeah, I think you should watch them. But it makes so much more sense if you're confused about where the movies are now or the TV shows have now connected, because it like I was so lost on some of the stuff like
Mhm.
when you do start to meet some of these characters, and as we get further into Ahsoka I feel like that'll happen even more. I'll feel like I'll be more confused, so I'm glad that I'm now catching up on this, and I can't wait to get to Ahsoka because I know that's kind of where we're headed, where I want to watch Ahsoka again now that I understand where she comes from and leading up to.
Right.
So
That'll be a good watch. I think we might be able to get it worked out.
maybe as
Man,
we get to season 2,
yeah, like
that's what I was thinking.
because I think we'll be able to finish Bad Batch. We'll do Tales of the Empire. We'll do Rebels, and then we should be because Rebels is really important for Ahsoka. That is
Yeah.
the most important after Clone Wars. Um, that would probably set us up to where we would be because they're filming next year and it'll probably come out I guess 2026 2027. So
Yeah.
like
We're
we
on a
might
good
have a good
path.
shot of getting
Yeah.
onto you rewatching Ahsoka season 1 before season 2 drops.
Right.
So that'll be fun. Yeah, we've this will be shorter than Clone Wars, obviously less episodes. We have it planned for 19 weeks. I tried to group these episodes as best as I could. Some of like season 1, I'll say like give it some time in the sense of started off very strong in this. There's going to be some episodes that are a little bit more, I'd say not Clone Wars esque in the sense of like having the droid episodes, but like almost like mission of the week
Yeah.
type of thing. And then like really season 2 has some of the best episodes I've ever seen of Star Wars stuff. And then you got season 3 and like if I told you my favorite character in this show, you'd probably be surprised and it'd be like, why is that your favorite character? There are so many good things that character, like not good in the sense of like being a good person, but just like
Yeah.
there's good character stuff with the character. So we'll get through that a lot faster than like the 40 some weeks it took
Yeah.
for Clone Wars. And then of course Rebels I think is longer than this by a few episodes, so it'll probably be almost the same sort of amount of weeks for Rebels, or a little bit more weeks, and then we'll be set up pretty well for. We'll probably do an Ahsoka rewatch on the pod too with you, since we can get your thoughts on that show then, because we covered that originally as it aired. Ron and Chris and I, covered Ahsoka over there. So if people want to hear my thoughts on Ahsoka now, those are already available. The Blu-ray is coming out. It's out, actually. I'm hoping I get it for Christmas. By the time this episode airs, I'll know if I had it for Christmas. So I don't know why I just even bothered to say it. But before recording, we're recording before Christmas. This episode is dropping end of January after Skeleton Crew. So we have some runway here for us to record a few of these weeks and get it knocked out. But yeah, so next week is 2 episodes. Week 3 is 2 episodes. So, and then we kind of really get into, like, season 1 is over after 6 weeks. So we'll have that done pretty quickly. Thank you all for watching and listening along. If you want to contact us, you can contact us. You must contact us at podawakens@gmail.com, as C.O. Bibble says in The Phantom Menace. Podawakens is all of our social media handles, at Podawakens. Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, all at Podawakens on there. We also have a Discord that you can discuss Star Wars, Marvel, DC, because it's all of our Logjam Media network, where we have a DC podcast, we have a Marvel podcast, we have a fantasy-based podcast, we have a soccer podcast. Logan and I talk American soccer on the Stateside Soccer Show over there. So we have a bunch of podcasts that are on the network, all discussed on the same Discord. That's in the link below too, if you're interested in that. Otherwise, have a great rest of your week. We'll catch you next time when we talk Cut and Run and The Replacements.